What's up, everyone? Episode 4 of the COVID-19 quarantine Q&A. And today we're going to talk little bit about superpowers, memorable meetings, books, and COVID-19, of course. So let's go.
Do you see something positive about COVID-19 that can help you at the UN?
When it comes to the positive things, first of all, I have to say that there's not a lot of positive things about this virus if you focus on it. There's a lot of tragedy, a lot of fear, angst. People are in hospitals, they fear their life, the elderly and the vulnerable, and Indigenous peoples as well. It's a lot of Indigenous territories are cross-border. I want to talk about borders like political borders. And so, for example, the Sami, they live in 3-4 different countries. The Haudenosaunee, they have the territory in Canada as well as in the U.S. The Yaqui have territories both in the U.S. as well as in Mexico. The Indigenous peoples from the Dayak people, they have people living both in Indonesia, Malaysia, and Borneo. Malaysia and Indonesia. So it is very difficult for them as well. So we're not just looking at the ramifications in terms of the number of lives lost, but also in terms of culturally things that we're about to lose and because of the virus. So that's why it's very hard to look at the positive side of the virus. So when I have to think about something positive, it is about, so let me give you an example, right? In the oceans negotiations on what we call the BBNJ, Biodiversity Beyond National Jurisdiction, basically from an Indigenous point of view, we have three pillars that we try to maintain within the negotiations. One is the full and effective and direct and meaningful participation of Indigenous peoples in the negotiations at all levels. Second is that the Declaration on the Rights of Indigenous Peoples is the normative framework for everything that affects Indigenous peoples or Indigenous peoples, or the Declaration should be part of the terms of reference. So not just the UNCLOS or the UN Convention on the Law of the Sea, but also the Declaration on the Rights of Indigenous Peoples. And the third one is to provide equity and equality between scientific knowledge and indigenous knowledge, or the knowledge of indigenous peoples. They call it traditional knowledge, but that's a whole different monster that I should go into in a different video. But there should be equity and equality between scientific knowledge as well as the knowledge of indigenous peoples. When I talk about the knowledge of indigenous peoples, we have had practices to preserve the biodiversity of the oceans, but also not only in the oceans, but also in the land. And one of those practices is what we call in the Pacific. We have one particular practice, but there are several words for it, different ways of expressing it. For example, in Aotearoa, New Zealand, you call it the rahui. In Maluku, you call it the sasi, for example. And basically what it means is that Indigenous peoples, we temporarily prohibit people from entering, not prohibit, we close an area, a resource or a water for a season or a certain period of time, so that people cannot go into that area or extract resources from a particular resource. As a conservation measure. So making sure that, for example, when in terms of fisheries, that certain type of fish, we see that it's about to be depleted, then we call a rahui or a sasi, and we say for an X amount of time, and we do it through ceremony, and the Indigenous peoples really abide by that ceremony, and respect the ceremony, and respect the measure as well, that this type of fish may not be fished upon or may not be harvested. So, for example, it can be for 6 months, for example, and after 6 months, we see that this type of fish repopulates, there's now a lot enough fish, at least for the people to be for them to be fed, and then the measure is being will be lifted. So that is a measure that Indigenous peoples have been deploying since time immemorial. So it's not just oceans, but it's also, like I said, can also be animals, certain type of flour, type of fruits, you name it. That's all for conservation. So I had a very difficult time explaining that to negotiators and representatives of member states, about explaining that, for example, this measure. It is nature-based. It doesn't require a lot of money. It is something that we've been doing for a very long time, and if we can see the effects of them. And apparently, that's what I figure right now, is that people probably will only understand what I'm trying to say once they experience it. So maybe, I'm not sure, but maybe right now when I bring this to IGC for the next round and the final round of negotiations, and I explain to them, well, what we're doing is actually what people did during the lockdown, so that they were locking themselves up in their own homes, for conservation of themselves, making sure that the virus doesn't get to them. For a certain amount of time, we lock ourselves down for the virus to disappear. Maybe we're going to try it, at least. I've been talking to some friends and colleagues, and they said, yeah, like this is at least a way of explaining the indigenous ABMTs, or area-based management tools, to scientists and representatives of states. So I think that, I don't know, could be a positive thing in my work at the UN.
If you could have a superpower, what would you have?
So if I have a superpower, then it would be, either the ability to relocate at the snap of your fingers. So like, and you could be in Rome, or you could be in New York, or you could be in your bathroom, like stuff like that. I think if that would be a superpower, I would love to have that superpower. It would be cool, and it would be very cost effective. Like you would not have to pay for train tickets or airplane tickets, or need to have a car anymore. You should like, all right, let's go to let's go to the supermarket, and just like snap your fingers, go back, snap your fingers. So that would be cool. Otherwise, something that I've been experiencing is I read a lot. I consume a lot of books and audiobooks. So, and my way of reading is like I need to read a book, for example, at least 2 times to be able to understand it. So if I had a superpower, it would be the ability to read books at a much faster pace, or to listen to an audiobook much faster, of course, or like consume it and like fathom it and then be able to apply it. So if that would be a superpower, I would definitely take it. Otherwise, I'm good as it is, I think.
What's the most memorable meeting you've ever had?
All right, so the most memorable meeting I've ever had. Yes, one comes to mind. And it's not a meeting as in like that I gave like a Martin Luther King speech, or that I was able to negotiate something that was impossible with a member state or negotiator. It's actually during the before the World Conference. There was a lobbying team based in New York. I was part of it, so we were in New York for a couple of months, almost 6 months in New York, lobbying, meeting with member states, and from time to time, we met with what we call the group of friendly states. So states that are very friendly and supportive of Indigenous people's priorities for the World Conference in terms of the outcome document and our priorities. And I don't know why, but for a certain meeting with this group of friends, and we always met at their embassy or at their mission, and it was myself, Estebancio Castorias from Cunayala, and Matias Aron from the Sami. And I hope they still remember this meeting, because I definitely do. We don't know who shows up. We know that all these states will show up, but not who they will send. So, and it was like pretty big room. It could fit like 30 to 40 people, and like maybe 15 to 20 around the table. So you can imagine like only the three of us on one side, from an indigenous side, and then the states on the other side, just trying to like keep in touch on things, and start strategizing or start having conversations. But little did we know, or we did not expect that at this meeting, and usually there's the meetings that we have is like a mix of men, women, older, younger. It's a mix. Like I said, like it depends on who they send to a certain meeting. But for this particular meeting, I don't know. Maybe it was intentionally or a coincidence. I hope it was a coincidence and not intentionally. But this time, all the group of friends, they sent in women, like females, and not only were they just women, but they were like looked almost like all of them like supermodels. So you should imagine like the three of us like strategizing, like should we say, like what do we know, what do we don't know, what should we ask, and usually they're already in the room before we get in. So we went to the reception, and they sent us upstairs to the mission. It's like a very tall building, and the receptionist like, all right, I'll bring you to the meeting room, and she opened the door for us, and I was like, hallelujah, like that, and we were I don't know, intimidated. Like for me at least, I don't know if I should be intimidated or somewhat excited. I'm like, what is this? So the three of us, we walked in, we sat down, and so that was like the most memorable meeting actually. That we were just like looking at each other like, oh shit, okay, all right, game face, let's go, let's do what we came here to do. And of course, like these are not just like women, beautiful women, but like they're smart. They're really smart. They're very experienced in negotiations. They're experts because they're more than meets the eye. And so yeah, so afterwards, well, not afterwards, but like we immediately segued into like having a conversation about the work. But in terms of memorable meetings, I will always remember, if I have to remember a meeting that was happening before the World Conference, that will be that meeting, because that was very, very interesting the way that happened. And funny enough, all the meetings that we had with the group of friends afterwards, it was a mix. So only that meeting, the only meeting that only the three of us could make it, because you had a lobbying team of 7 members, or and the secretaries, like you had like almost 10 people that would also participate in those meetings. That was the only time that only the three of us could go, the 3 youngest men, and the only time that like the group of friends, by coincidence probably, sent in very smart and very good-looking women. So yeah, I think that is the most memorable meeting that I've participated in to date. At least that comes to my mind right now.
What's the best book you've ever read, and would recommend first-timers to the UN?
Best book I've ever read. I read a lot of books while I was in law school and other. best book I've ever read. I read a lot of books, and I think I think should rephrase the question a little bit. Like, what is the book that made the most impact on me? And it's not a books that I read in law school. It's actually a book that I read recently, and when I talk about recently, it is 4 years ago, 3.5 years ago. Recommended by my little brother, and while I was down and was really questioning my ability, was very self-aware. Well, not self-aware, but was really negative about myself, pessimistic, twisted. Now I was very pessimistic, and he recommended one book, and I read it. I bought it, and I read it like from cover to cover in like 2 hours, and I was sold. I was like, wow, this is a very amazing book, and I recommend the book to other people that have been through a similar situation, but also people are trying to find some balance, some guidelines for their lives. Actually, I was in an airplane. I was flying to where I was flying. I think I was flying to Canada. So Amsterdam, Vancouver, and I had a couple of books with me, and this book was one of them. And so the flight attendant came in to ask what I want to drink. So I was like, well, I have a water, like sparkling water, and she was like, oh, these are nice books. One was the one book with Richard Branson. Like, oh, I love this guy. So I was, yeah, I like this book. And all of a sudden, like, she asked me, oh, what is this book? What is this about? So I told her, like, the whole book, and like, I knew that she had to like help other people as well, because other people were thirsty and looking at me like, dude, like I'm thirsty. Like, don't keep this flight attendant from doing her work. So I was very conscious of that. So I just gave her like a 5 or 10 seconds rundown of the book, and she was sold. So it's like, oh, I should make a copy of that book, or like be able to. I should take down the title of it. So this book is The Four Agreements by Ruiz, and this book is amazing. It basically tells you like why it is very important to make these four agreements with yourself, to be able to live a free life, free of judgment, and making sure that you get the most out of it. So I am not going to spoilers. There are only four agreements. I read the book from cover to cover in 2 hours, meaning that you can do it too, or you can go on YouTube and Google it, and you'll get a gist of it. But I definitely recommend you to read the book. There are several books that came after it, The Fifth Agreement, and other books as well. Very interesting, but definitely start with The Four Agreements. I loved it, and that book has actually caused me to, not caused, but like it made me start loving to read. So I started with that book, and then I bought another book. So Amazon, like 2017, like it made a lot of money out of me. Like I spend, I don't know, every month. Yeah, after every month. So like I read 4 books a month. So then I went on to Amazon. I didn't have like a reading list, or I wasn't part of a book club. I just read 4 books, and I'm like, oh, now my interest is in this, so I should check if there's any great books on this. So it's very ad hoc, and so I ordered the books, and they came in, and I read them. And it all started with the Four Agreements, and so I definitely recommend you to others to read that book. And it's a book that I like to give away as well. So I gave away the book like to a lot of people, and I always with a personal message in it, like hoping that it would help them as it helped me. And to close off this whole conversation is that in the airplane, so while this flight attendant was done serving people, I walked unintentionally though, like I think I had to go to the bathroom, and she came up to like, well, can you explain a little bit about this book? So I had a conversation with her and other flight attendants about like what caused me to read this book, how it helped me, and all of a sudden we had a very good conversation about judgment, about doing your best, not taking things personally, being careful with the words that you pick. It was a very good conversation, and I think the funny thing is that like we had a very good conversation. I think like it's like a 9 or 10 hour flight. We talked for the most of it. So they had to step out, of course, to help people, but we talked for the most part of it. And then before we deboarded the plane, I realized that she forgot to take a photo of the cover of the book. So she quickly took a photo of the cover of the book, and then all the colleagues took a photo of the cover of the book as well. So hopefully, right now, while we're all in quarantine and the airplane industry is taking a really big hit, shout out to the KLM flight attendants that were on that flight, but also like in general, all flight attendants. These are very hard times, and I hope that those that took a photo of that book have found value in it. So yeah, The Four Agreements, that was the best book that I've ever read. And yeah, in terms of the books that you read before going to the UN, like yeah, I think that's a very good book to start with, actually. Not just how to negotiate in a UN context or other books that are about negotiations, advocacy, lobbying, and everything else. But I think a book like that would be a very good starter to like center yourself a little bit. Well, not a little bit. Like center yourself first before reading other books. Yeah, and then there's several, like dozens of books that I would recommend people to read before going to the UN. But that is, if I go through that, this would be like an hour and a half video, and probably like a one large, big, lengthy book report. So I'm not going to do that, into that. So that's it for now. I hope you enjoyed this episode. I hope you found value in it, and yeah, subscribe, drop a comment, or link up with me on social. I'm on many platforms, and yeah, have a good day.